welcome back to ZFK Everything. This is the show that knows no bounds and discusses anything and everything. I have Nico Gadea here. Did I pronounce that wrong again?
No, that's all right, Gadea.
Gadea. Terrible with names, I'm so sorry.
No, that's
Thanks
totally
for coming
okay.
on.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, me and Nico met at a event for Town of Lincoln that we had some mutual friends at, and that was through a company called Civic Connect. How would you describe that again for me?
So Civic Connect is a really cool nonprofit. We try to engage people, and specifically youth, in the gap that they seem to be missing from post-secondary into that workplace. So specifically, I'm the experiential learning supervisor, where I provide youth with the soft skills, including teamwork, work ethic, among others, and communication, to help get them work ready through experiential learning.
Cool. That's super important. I love that. And so this event was neat. We had some local politicians there, the mayor and others, and basically the event was to announce as far as I know, it was like a record investment. It was the biggest investment outside of the infrastructure sector in the town of Lincoln ever. And do you remember how much it was? Like $2 million?
It was $2 million that they invested into
this
their.
Was for small businesses and youth in business or something like that?
Yeah, so for small businesses and for this program, the Youth Skills Studio, to help people from Lincoln, specifically youth, become acquainted with the kind of experience that you would learn in the corporate world.
Yep.
In a way that is safe for them to learn.
Cool.
And mitigates kind of that stress from, I can't make mistakes and stuff, and teach them really, mistakes is actually the best way to learn.
The best teacher.
Yeah, and your work here, we actually encourage you to make mistakes, and we have these safety nets so that we come in and we say, well, in this mistake here, it would be great to create a workshop or to have you do a workshop on conflict management or group dynamics, strength-based approach, etc. So
cool. Basically, the network I had just had me fly a drone for about 30 seconds for demonstration's sake. So, I mean, that was cool, easy work.
You had the fun part of the job there. Yeah.
Pretty much. So anyways, I get there and I'm a little bit introverted myself. I have the potential to be extroverted, but I prefer not to in social setting. Really, if you're gonna have like a great big conversation with me, we have to be somewhat on the same page or same energy wavelength, and then we'll hit it off, So basically what I did was I was trying to talk to a few people here and there, and then I see Nico sitting off by himself, quietly reading a book, and I go, oh, what are you reading? And he's got, 12 Rules to Life by Jordan Peterson?
Yeah, Antidote to Chaos.
Okay, so I haven't read any of Jordan Peterson's books, but
highly recommend.
Instantly, I'm like, okay, this guy knows what's good. He's reading Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson's a good voice of reason in today's world of madness and unreason. So then, really, what led to this podcast was when somehow we got on the topic of crypto. Maybe I brought it up. I'm a little bit obsessed, as you know. Nico revealed to me that he's been in crypto for much longer than I have. And I guess my first question I wanted to ask you was, when and how did you first purchase your Bitcoins, and what happened to your original holdings?
Yeah.
So one more thing, brother, if you want to talk to the audience, that's your camera there.
Yeah, okay, excellent. So interesting story I have with crypto, specifically Bitcoin is what I first purchased in November 2011. I was just starting my undergrad, and it was something that was really interesting to me from a conceptual standpoint.
And how old were you?
2011, 18, 19. Yeah, first year of...
I was graduating elementary school and going into high school in 2011.
Yeah, that was my first year.
Finance and Bitcoin, oh man, it was so far out of my wheelhouse, I wouldn't have even thought of it.
Yeah, well, in retrospect, everybody kind of knows more than at the time, right? And I was actually one of those people. So even though I did get into Bitcoin back then, I ended up selling my holdings for a little bit more than a coffee. So kind of funny. I had.
What would you say your net profit was on that?
I actually lost money. I paid more for the Bitcoin, which I had purchased for $2 and about 48 cents.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I sold 20 coin
Mm-hmm.
for breakfast, which was just a coffee and a croissant. So basically just a large coffee.
And they accepted that Bitcoin Direct?
So my friend, yeah, he was one who got me into Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And once I got Bitcoin, you know, I started getting a bit cold feet.
Yep.
And so, yeah, he was the one who, you know, I had asked him, hey, can you, and I wasn't even offering Bitcoin, but he's like, yeah, that 20 Bitcoin you just have, I'll take that. And I thought, wow, great, I can unload it and I don't have to worry, and it's free for me, right?
Yeah.
What's Bitcoin? Nobody knew, right?
Now, and that was that your entire holdings?
That was my entire holdings,
And
yeah.
how long would you say that you held that for?
Probably about 3 weeks.
Oh wow, that's it, eh?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's I had done a bit of research beforehand,
Yep.
and I liked the idea. I got into it, right, understanding a little bit more about blockchain technology and why it was created in 2009, and I really liked it. The only thing I didn't like was that it wasn't universally kind of accepted. I couldn't go to the store and buy anything. I couldn't pay my tuition with it. So it was kind of like a worthless holding, in my opinion, at the time. And I didn't really understand how the economics of digital currencies were going to manifest over the subsequent years. I didn't really understand.
It's impossible to quantify how big it would become.
Yeah, and at the time I was quite naive. I knew far less than I know now. And I think that I didn't really understand in what ways Bitcoin was an improvement to the currency. I didn't know, for example, that there's a big difference between a currency that is limited and finite comparatively to, let's say, the dollar, which was taken off the gold standard, the US dollar, at least in 1933 by Roosevelt. And I didn't really understand that idea of, as the population growth continues to increase exponentially, and you have a finite product or resource, let's say like gold, right? Its value indefinitely will increase. And that delayed gratification concept was pretty foreign to me.
I love that. We are a society of instant gratification. And people
Yeah.
don't realize the value of, I don't want to call it waiting for things that are good, but having a longer time preference is what they call it, you know?
Yeah.
Being able to wait for your investment for a couple of years, 10 years.
It's so hard to teach people now delayed gratification. That's one of the biggest issues I have when I'm teaching my soft skills for Civic.
Yep. So I guess something that I'd like to define with Bitcoin, like, let's put it this way. In simplest terms, what would you define Bitcoin in your understanding of it?
Yeah, no, great question. I think it's a question that often gets overcomplicated, and it doesn't really have to be. Bitcoin is a digital currency, unlike others that we know of, but Bitcoin specifically uses something called blockchain technology, which really increases its level of security. Now, it's the longest lasting cryptocurrency since 2009, since created. And it uses blockchain technology, which was actually invented in the 90s. And it was mostly invented to encrypt documents so that people can share documents with each other without being able to tamper with them. Largely forgotten about, wasn't used for that purpose. I guess similar to tampons that were invented for bullet hole wounds and then were never used for that.
Oh.
Yeah, so kind of cool, interesting concept. Sorry for the graphic there.
Yeah, no, put a good image in my head.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And so Bitcoin, I guess the other important fact is that it's created improvements and advantages of all kinds compared to the normal currency or the conventional currency that we know today, like for example the Canadian dollar, the US dollar. And it's able to be transferred very quickly, and it's decentralized, which makes it enormous value. So it uses a distribution ledger, which is just a fancy word for saying a transaction kind of list of who got what, who sent what, right?
And that never goes away.
And that never goes
Every
away.
Bitcoin transaction is on a ledger that continues to be added to, and nodes on the system, which are miners of Bitcoin, essentially verify as a consensus together. Every single node has to agree that each transaction that goes onto this ledger is correct and valid, which is what makes it really secure. It's really interesting.
Yeah. So that would be like the blockchain technology we were just referring to, and it makes it quite secure for sure. But on top of that, there's other added benefits to its security, like proof of work concept, etc.
How would you define proof of work?
So proof of work, in simplest terms, is almost like a bottling of how long it takes for each block within that chain to be rewritten.
Okay.
Let's say if you were to rewrite it. And so if somebody is trying to manufacture Bitcoin, let's say, or tamper with Bitcoin, not only would they have to change that block, but they'd have to change all subsequent blocks afterwards. Otherwise, it would all be invalid. Proof of work causes each coin to take about 10 minutes time to be rewritten. And so if you have to have 10 minutes for one block and then 10 minutes for all the subsequent millions of other blocks, right? It would take you way too long to be able to verify or to actually tamper with or create Bitcoin kind of haphazardly. On top of that, you would need a majority, so about 50% of all the computers currently with the distribution ledger to agree with your change string. So it's a kind of maybe complicated concept, but it adds a level of security that's unprecedented, that really makes it secure. In fact, I would say that the only thing that is, I guess, the least secure thing about Bitcoin is the platform for which you hold Bitcoin, maybe. I would say, but even
there are solutions to that. You can do a cold wallet, which is something that I use personally and I recommend. You never know with the day-to-day changes of regulations if an exchange is going to go down where you hold your crypto, if they're going to withhold that from you. The best way to do it is to keep it on a cold storage device where it's in your control. What they always say in crypto, not your keys, not your crypto. The keys are your private keys. That is how you get to move your crypto around. If you do not hold the private keys on a cold storage device of your own, it's just not as safe.
Not as safe, absolutely, yeah.
So I guess all I would add to that definition of Bitcoin is like, Bitcoin to me is like programmed, predictable scarcity. And that is because, again, those nodes that verify the transactions that go on a ledger earn a reward. It's a competitive reward. They get a Bitcoin reward for getting to these equations and these transactions the fastest. If they can get to it faster than anyone else, they get the Bitcoin reward. And that's why people spend millions of dollars building up these Bitcoin warehouses with the nodes, cooling them and having them try and compete to get this Bitcoin reward, because today Bitcoin is, I think, around $64,000 Canadian. Well worth the reward if you can get to it. But back in the day when you got into it, little cyberpunks could probably get on their laptop with 8 gigabyte RAM and mine their Bitcoin. Today, if you do that on a laptop, you're never going to get the Bitcoin. So why I say it's basically programmed scarcity is because the supply of Bitcoin is forever dwindling lower and lower. They say that the max cap of Bitcoin will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. But the thing that's really interesting is, due to the pioneers that got into Bitcoin early, or even just irresponsible people today, there is such thing as permanent losses. So we estimate that all in all, the most Bitcoin we'll ever have liquid or illiquid in the system being held and not lost is going to be about 17 to 18 million. So quantify that by the amount of millionaires on Earth. There are far more millionaires than 18 million millionaires, and they're all going to be competing just to have one Bitcoin. There's your scarcity right there. And why it's a programmed amount of scarcity is because every 4 years, that Bitcoin reward that the nodes are competing to mine gets cut in half every 4 years.
Yeah, that happening.
And thus, due to that, there's a delayed basically lack of Bitcoin. I had a better word for it, but basically there's a supply shock. That was the word. There's a delayed supply shock every 4 years, and that's why we have a 4-year Bitcoin cycle. Thereby, Bitcoin is the leader. Then you have other cryptos such as Ethereum, XRP, Litecoin, whatever it be. Those Bitcoin profits get shuffled down into the other assets. It gets rotated down, and then you have a perpetuating cycle every 4 years. And because it's a small space and it's new, it's only about probably around $2 trillion, whereas all the stocks in the world are probably over 100 trillion. I don't know that fact for sure, but we're talking about bigger numbers. Because there's only $2 trillion in crypto, and I think half of that $2 trillion is in Bitcoin, it takes far less money to move the market. And thus, that is where you have the volatility. And if you're a holder, the volatility can be scary, but if your time preference is long and you don't mind the ups and downs, you're always going to be going up and to the right. But the volatility is great if you're a trader, because then you can make the best opportunity of going up or down, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been a pretty successful day trader to some degree, but because we're heading into the later stages of the market, I don't day trade right now. I'm just accumulating and holding and adding to my positions. And at some point, I'm hoping within the next couple months, I believe the market top will be coming between October and January. Whenever it gets to be time, I'm not going to be trying to hold to the top of the market, because that's foolish. You're likely never going to get a good read on that and pull out at the exact right time. I'll be laddering out of positions essentially. And to add to kind of some of our personal holdings, not that we'll get too much into that, you said you just had Bitcoin, right?
For cryptocurrency, yeah.
Yeah. Me personally, I have no Bitcoin right now. I have no Ethereum. Do I believe in both these projects? I think they're fantastic. I think they're here to stay. I think that both are household names. But right now, the opportunity for me is in the altcoins. Altcoins are coins that are not Bitcoin, alternate coins. They have less money in them. Thus, when those Bitcoin profits get shuffled down into these smaller cap altcoins, they tend to go crazy. And speaking of going crazy, it's been driving me crazy being in this space for almost 2 years. I'm so glad that I got into it before it got popular, before the Elon Musk tweets, before the Dogecoin fiasco, all that stuff. Super, super glad to be a part of this money-making opportunity, but also glad to be exposed to this asset that I genuinely believe is going to lead us into the future. It's a new technology. I might not be a pioneer per se and been able to get into it early as you did, but I still think even now is still early if your time preference is long enough. I really do think that cryptocurrencies played right are the investing opportunity of the century, honestly.
Absolutely.
There's very little disruptive technology like this out there.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've done a lot of calculations and done a lot of research on predictions. And even though predictions are not maybe the best way to look at it, when you get like
But it's a fun way.
Yeah, when you get your predictions right as you keep going, you're like, man, it's been 10 years of predictions that I've been within 5%, right? It's like, okay. And I think we're heading into some really nice waters. October, November,
yeah,
for Bitcoin.
I wanted to ask you, that was my last question on here, but we'll just bring it ahead. Do you have any prediction for the Bitcoin market top date and price?
Huh.
And again, we won't ridicule you if you're wrong, because no one's ever right.
Yeah,
I
no.
just want to know your input.
Absolutely. And I'm not a financial advisor at all.
None of this is financial advice, folks.
But yeah, so your highest of the year, I think will peak at the end of October. So we're pretty close to it.
I'm with you on that range.
Yep. And my prediction's at 210K per coin.
US or Canadian?
US.
Ooh.
Yeah, so roughly 210K, and then we're going to claw back until about January.
Mm-hmm.
And then in a few years, so by 2025, 2026,
that should be the next cycle top is around 2025.
Yeah, Yeah, I predicted 2.3 million per coin.
Okay.
And I've looked at some other people really into this space, and they're slightly even higher than my prediction. I feel like my prediction is a little bit more conservative. And then I didn't make any personal predictions by 2030, but looking at the data and the research, a lot of market analysts see this north of 10 million.
Okay.
So those would be my predictions for this year, 5 years, and 10 years.
Yep.
But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and the great thing about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin too, or that a Bitcoin in particular is divisible by 100,000 satoshis. So here in the reference stack sats. So if you can't afford a whole Bitcoin, which
You can-
I'm gonna be honest, I can't. You just get a portion of it, and you just get it, you lock it, you set it, forget it, and you let it carry into the future. And I guess maybe something we can touch on next is the general state of our financial outlook and community in Western society, and why things like Bitcoin are in such high demand because of their scarcity, especially since the COVID recession or depression, whatever you want to call it. We've been printing unprecedented amounts of money, and people don't realize that this isn't free money. You do pay for this in inflation, which is a silent killer of 1,000 concessions stabbing you in the back.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And it's scary that more people now growing into that age in their 20s and their 30s don't realize that. They're spending money at unprecedented rates, and they're thinking that this money that's being printed, whether they're getting it or not, is free money, and they're just dumping it, and no one's saving nearly enough. It terrifies me because if you don't, you're absolutely right, Zach. The amount of money, the amount of trillions of dollars that were printed within the last year and a bit is definitely pushing us towards this collapse.
Well, the U.S. has printed around 40% of all U.S. dollars in the last year and a half, and you don't see the effects of that right away. It takes a little while. It's really not looking good for a lot of people out there, and the worst part of it is that they're not even aware it's coming.
That's the silent killer, as you say. I couldn't agree more with that term.
Yeah, it's scary. So I guess where did this all start? It started with taking the U.S. dollar off of the gold reserve, and that happened. Now you said it was in the 1930s. I thought it was in the 70s. So I guess my question is which one was it? I thought who was in the 70s? It was the Watergate guy.
Watergate, yeah. So it was
Nixon, right?
Nixon, yeah. So it was first removed in 33.
Okay.
Yeah. So in the First World War, there was a ban on exporting gold from the U.S. They wanted to keep everything and inflate basically or be able to generate. And so then Britain then in 32ish, 31 had taken it off, the pound off the gold standard, and Roosevelt saw that and he was paying attention, and so he ordered basically by law that anybody who had any gold had to come and donate it or bring it back to the U.S. Federal Reserve. And the U.S. Federal Reserve was paying about $20 per ounce, and they generated approximately $310 million from that. And shortly after, the price went up. It was about $30 per ounce, so effectively increasing the Federal Reserve portfolio, let's say, by quite a bit, like 68% or so. And yeah, it was definitely a time per se, because people were we've been using gold for a very long time, since the 1800s. When really people were starting to use it as currencies and stuff. Like before that, people were trading, right? And so let's say I wanted to buy a horse, I'd trade you my cat. But what if the person doesn't want a cat? Then I can't buy their horse. And so there's this evolution of currency, and using coins that were basically of silver and of gold were, kind of almost the same in value terms, but removing it from that standard now makes it so that it could almost be infinitely created, and there's no real pressure to really kind of hold it. So anyways, it went back to the gold standard in the 70s, like you mentioned, was removed again and forgotten about almost. It seems like they forgot to put it back. From that administration, it wasn't very clear what their intention was, but it seemed like it was a temporary thing, and then they'll put it back to the standard.
Right.
But they never did, and so then you had some really crazy crashes, in 1999 and 2008, and right, and the only way that they could keep up was by printing money, and they did, and it's like a small band-aid, I guess. But
that's how I described 2008 as a giant issue that there was a band-aid slapped on. They didn't fix the problem, and that quantifies itself into the COVID recession.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so it was really cool in 2009 when Bitcoin was created kind of as a side market that was decentralized, that wasn't so reliant on the government, because before we were using gold as that metric, but now we're using like plastic money, or at the time paper money, that said basically the Federal Reserve promised to pay you $10 for this $10 bill or whatever, right? But if you have a collapse of a country, then you can't eat with that, right?
That's the thing, is the only thing that brings value to a dollar now is the fact that we all shake hands and agree that a dollar is a dollar.
Yeah.
And, if anything catastrophic were to happen, you want real assets that you'd be able to sell and leverage for yourself. And having a pile of cash, as nice and as flaunty as it looks, there's not real intrinsic value. So why do you think that we took ourselves off of the gold standard at the Federal Reserve in the States? What was the purpose of that? I just want to know your input. I have an idea of why, but...
Yeah, so I'm not sure I have enough information, but my opinion would be that, and we've seen this throughout time, generally decisions that have short-term benefits but long-term consequences are very kind of attractive to people in power, because they would reap the short-term benefits from that, or being able to and not have to worry so much about the long-term risk of that. I suspect that something along those lines was evident in this case, where removing it from that gold standard would allow that, the country to be able to control more of it by means of, being able to adjust inflation, interest rates, etc. And in cases like this, print out a lot of money to be able to, do whatever tasks that they need to be done.
That's what I was thinking, was that when you remove each dollar from its gold equivalent, effectively, it becomes not a finite thing anymore. It's technically infinite, and therefore you can print and fund whatever expenditures that you need at the time. And I can't say they'll never abolish it, but there's such a resistance to abolish that type of system, because you don't want to be the guy caught holding the hot bag.
Yeah.
Right? If you're the politician that cuts off that spending, it's going to hurt at first. Long term, it's going to be the right thing to do, and it's going to be a prosperous thing to do. But short term,
they won't see the benefits within their office.
It's like watching this whole situation with the printing that we're doing and the irresponsible fiscal monetary policy in Western countries like the States and Canada. Well, all the major G20 countries are printing money this way since the pandemic. It's like watching a violent car crash in slow motion. You can see it's coming, but it's happening very slowly.
Yeah.
And those that are prepared for it are going to profit off of this. And the vast majority that is not prepared for this it's going to be carnage out there.
It's going to be tough for sure. And a lot of people aren't even in the position where they can spend time to learn about this, right?
No.
They're worried about putting food on the table.
Yeah.
They don't. This seems like such a slow poison, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it's not really kind of at the forefront, and by the time they actually put effort into it, it's going to be maybe too late, and that's it's unfortunate, but
very unfortunate.
Life is like that.
This is why we have podcasts. This is why I was lucky to enjoy my high school experience, my elementary school experience, my college experience. I can say they're all worth it, but ultimately I've been a lifelong seeker of knowledge, especially through platforms like YouTube. right? Which is where this podcast is going.
Absolutely.
And,
No,
you
that's
know,
great.
I think that it's like a law of attraction. Your mind is only ready to receive the knowledge in which it needs to improve itself to create wealth when your mind becomes a wealth mindset. You need to have a mindset of abundance and go out there and reach out and try and grab those things that are going to help you instead of having a why me kind of mindset. Have you ever read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill?
I have, yes, yes.
I just finished it last week while I was on
Excellent book.
vacation.
Highly
Very
recommend.
good. That's basically what I was just encapsulating.
Yeah, no, in psychology, we call that growth and fixed mindset. It's
Okay.
by work by psychologist Carol Dweck from
Cool.
Stanford University. That's one of the biggest things that actually we teach at Civic Connect, right? And
Okay.
even in psychology. It's exactly that. It's the idea of we need to have more people with this growth mentality that understand that we can achieve anything we want. We're not born with a set of innate skills and nothing else, right? So therefore, we can, become financially literate. We could work towards, we could learn better. It's not about, oh, you're good at math. It's, wow, you put in a lot of effort and you did really well in that, right? And so I think that that's a pretty important thing because a lot of people who I try to talk to who, come to my workshops, they tell me, how am I supposed to learn this? I'm not good at that, right? And instead of the mindset of I'm not good at that, so let's not try, it's wow, that's a really great opportunity for building, my weaknesses, right? And kind of striving towards that. So absolutely something that I highly recommend, people attempt at least to try to see, even for themselves, what kind of mindset do I have when I approach tasks and projects, right? Is it of a mindset of, I can't achieve this because I've never been good at it, right? So I won't try it, more of a fixed mindset, comparatively to a growth mindset, right? So.
Yeah, I love it. I think I've always been such a strong advocate of this. This is just another thing I'm pulling from Think and Grow Rich. But I guess there is a bunch of rules for your mindset to prosper, and the number one thing was that you had to have a definite and burning, no, not burning desire, but yeah, I guess a burning desire, but also a very definite and convicted,
almost like curiosity.
Purpose.
Yeah, purpose, yeah.
If you don't have a purpose, you get lost, and like I've said it a million times, I don't know how it happened to me. Maybe I put myself in the right place, right time, or maybe, I don't know if you're religious, maybe God spoke to me and told me which direction to go, but I picked up a camera and I got into doing videos when I was in high school, and really, like, I was always an artist, but I knew I wasn't going to be an artist by trade because, the starving artist thing. And, when I picked up the camera and became inspired and started making videos, I ended up effectively just figuring out a new path in life. I got into photography, and here we are now. We have all my gear here. We're doing a podcast, and I'm working on building a personal brand. So I guess what I'm getting at, without being too sloppy with my words, is my purpose came to me. I don't know how, and I am extremely blessed by that because I figured it out that I wanted to be in this creative field at about maybe 17 when I picked up the camera for the first time. And the way I look at it is now at 24, so how many years is that? 7 years? Had I figured this out today, I would be 7 years behind where I'm at today.
Yeah.
And it's what you've done the last 5, 6, 7 years that make up your reality today, right? And I'm not where I want to be yet. Of course not. That's just life. You can't have things happen overnight as much as you'd like, and that goes for holding crypto as well. You'd like to get rich overnight, but I love the fact that I've been doing this mental gymnastics of justifying buying more crypto and holding it and rotating the profits into other stuff and not paying myself yet. I've been doing that for 2 years, and it's been crazy. Like, some of my holdings, I've been up vastly only to watch it dwindle away back to what it was, or even less than what I purchased it for, and then to watch it go back up again for even higher. It's this crazy game. And I guess one of the last things I want to add to crypto before we talk about something else here was, I'll give you my definition, then I want to know what you think. But a lot of people often challenge Bitcoin and other crypto and say, there's no intrinsic value. Like, what is it? And I guess the way I think of it, or one of the ways I think of it, is that cryptocurrencies being a finite thing, and every single token or coin you have is an individual unique coin, it's like property. So I guess one of the ways that I love to hear crypto described, especially like Bitcoin and Ethereum and such, these finite assets, is that this is akin to purchasing real estate in Manhattan in the 1800s. There's a finite amount of it, and it's going to be vastly popular and scarce at some point. So by having a long time preference on some of these assets, you make your profits up front, but you want to hold some of it for decades. If you can do that, then you're probably going to be sitting very pretty in the future. So I guess maybe your definition is the same as mine, but when someone challenges you on the value of crypto, just like Bitcoin specifically, like what is your answer to that? Because a lot of people are often adamant. They're like, no, it's not worth nothing, you know?
And for which I tell them that's a double negative. Not worth nothing means it's worth something. I'm just kidding. No, absolutely. It is a question I get often. It's, how could you spend X amount of money and keep it there and not be worried that you can't eat with it, for example, or you can't put shelter over your house, or rather be shelter for you and your family. And it's a great question. Honestly, it is. My retort, I guess, would say, I think a lot of the things we have today, even the dollar amount itself doesn't have very much intrinsic value. Like the Canadian bills are made of plastic, for example, right? I can't eat with that, and I can only put shelter for my family with that as long as it's continued to be recognized. So in a way, a lot of currencies are like that. Another thing I would say is that I think that Bitcoin is a better currency than our conventional currencies by a long shot in about 9 or 10 different ways. It's basically the optimal currency in a way, as long as it doesn't change, but also it's continuously being improved upon. Now they're putting all kinds of different things like smart contracts, etc., to improve it and continue expanding it. And the point of Bitcoin, I think, is you're always going to have a limited amount, so 21 million, as Zach said, and so it's not going to change from that. But also, it's accepted everywhere universally, no matter your ethnicity or culture, religion, etc. Right? But
Bitcoin does not discriminate.
It does not discriminate, yeah. But also, it's much more accessible. This is something that we don't really think about very much in the Western world, but I've been to several places in Africa, and not to say that they're at the level to buy Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is much more accessible to them than a centralized bank.
Absolutely.
Because they don't have documents, they don't have,
And another thing I'd like to add too is that just from the discriminatory point of that is that Bitcoin is completely permissionless. No one is telling you you can't send it or spend it on something.
Absolutely, everyone can buy Bitcoin. Yeah, absolutely. There's
you can barter it for whatever you want to. There's no middleman saying we don't like that purchase.
Yeah, for sure. And going off of that, there's no middleman transaction fees. It's a very small transaction fee that happens, but it's very minimal compared to banks, let's say. There's no third people or third person transactions when you're moving it across places. It's much faster to move, right? A lot of companies now are accepting it.
I think that's a great move.
I think it's great. Now, some companies obviously redact it a little bit.
They just throw it, most of the time, as far as I understand, they throw it in a war chest. Most of these companies that are accepting Bitcoin aren't necessarily spending it. They put it away as company reserves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Strategically.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think that the major companies, and we can talk about Tesla and Burger King and whatever, but basically these major companies that first hold a lot of Bitcoin and assets, but also are wanting to allow Bitcoin to be used to buy products. Their only real, I guess, argument is that it's not sustainable energy-wise right now for Bitcoin mining, let's say, etc. But as we move into a world of sustainable, renewable energy, you won't have any argument against it anymore. I think it'll be much more widely accepted. especially if we have economic crashes. I think
Yep.
the European Central Bank will go first, will go up first, and that
Good old
will,
Christine Lagarde.
yeah, and that'll create a big ripple effect. And you'll see, like just like every recession, if you take a look at Bitcoin or other coins, anytime these centralized banks start collapsing, it's these decentralized ones that start going up, right? And so
Right.
if we're thinking about the trillions and trillions of dollars causing massive inflation that might risk the economy, right? Bitcoin is a very safe place. Although I'm not exactly sure yet when I'm going to liquidate my Bitcoin, basically I only put in an amount of money that I'm comfortable with losing.
Always a key factor of investing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Risk what you can afford to lose.
Only invest what you're comfortable losing. Yeah. So I put about $97,000 or so in that in March last year, and I was comfortable, leaving it, right? Basically. But I'm okay almost waiting for my retirement before checking that out. So these are these long-term trends that you're looking for, and for something that's finite, it's absolutely inevitable.
I love it. Yeah, that supply every 4 years gets cut in half. And as it grows in popularity, people are going to claw tooth and nail to get their shot at having some Satoshis. So I'd say it's a safe bet. Honestly, I think a lot of cryptocurrencies are going to die by not being popular or the utility not being good or by regulation. Bitcoin is the only one that I really, certainly with my whole heart and soul, know is not going anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with its dollar cap, it's about 900 million or about 1 trillion. You had mentioned this. And then the second Ethereum is like 189 million.
Second biggest cryptocurrency.
Yeah, so it's like significantly less dollar cap or cap there.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. There's so much potential for some of these coins, but again, you need to do your research, know what you're doing, and invest what you can afford to lose. Myself personally, I don't have any stocks. Got a little bit of GIC action, a little bit of TFSA action going on, but I am completely out of the traditional realm for the most part, mostly exposed to crypto. But what I'll be doing when I make my profits this cycle is I'm going to be looking to de-risk a bit. I want to get some stocks, hopefully first and foremost some property, another finite thing that you can purchase and you can repurpose to essentially make you money on the side. Whatever, probably some precious metals too. I'd love to have some gold and silver and such to have for emergency's sake. Whatever I need to do to really set a solid concrete foundation for the rest of the stuff I'm going to build in my life.
Yeah, real estate is another big one. I just bought a property. October 1st, I think, is closing day. Nice. Here in St. Catharines, and I think that real estate is one of those things that it's an investment for which can be an investment itself, like an investment within an investment. You're making money off the appreciation.
Investmentception.
Yeah, making money off of the that appreciating land value, right? Especially as a lot more people move to remote areas. But also you can rent it out and you can have somebody else pay for that mortgage for which is appreciating, right? And so there's a lot of really great stuff in real estate for those who are uncomfortable with cryptocurrency. But a diversified portfolio is going to be your best friend. Just index funds if you want to play it safe. A little basket of stocks per se would be a good idea. Remember your stop losses, please. Don't just buy without stop losses. But a little bit of crypto, a little bit of real estate, and you're golden. You leave it, and you'll be sitting very pretty, and not even as long as you think, maybe 5-10 years. And that's true freedom, I think.
Yeah, and again, this is why we're here making this content. Again, I think it's really, really important to make personal finance, cool, trendy, something that people should be interested in. I have plenty more to learn. Me too. There is no knowing everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest drive for me to Bitcoin was that FOMO that I got from 2011 of like losing money. Like I bought it at $2.48 and I was losing money to buy this breakfast, right? That was delivered to me, right? Now we have Skip or whatever, but and it was just like a lot of that mental exhaustion, and at the time I didn't realize how to think about this fear of missing out, but the idea of it jumping, even I remember when Bitcoin broke $100, I was like crying because I'm like, man, that's $2,000, right, that I could have made.
That's one of the most, we did break cameras, by the way, folks, so that's why we're just talking about something random. That's one of the biggest driving and unique forces of the market cycle every 4 years, is that you get out of the market, like basically markets and charts, it's all actually a reflection of human psychology when you look at a chart, and really that's what it is. You're in a disbelief phase every cycle and you're like, no way, it's not happening, it's not going up again, and sure enough, the people that have sold earlier on in disbelief end up entering the euphoria stage when they see it take off without them, and then that's what really propels these charts to go so high and so vertical so violently, is that human emotion of fear of missing out, or FOMO, people trying to jump in.
Yeah, fear and greed. It's very potent emotions.
Extremely.
We've evolved to have them to survive, right? For a long time, thousands and thousands of years, right? And here we are, right, being exploited, let's say.
Yeah. Left and right.
At least some hedge funds, right? They exploit that and they ladder each other and stuff to instigate this fear and greed, which causes these fluctuations. So, it's funny. I actually didn't get into psychology until I started trading.
And that's probably something that got you interested in it.
Absolutely, yeah.
You don't, like, I just remember being a kid or whatever, never really looked at charts, but you look at charts and you say, oh my God, like that's so boring. I don't care. But once you get some interest in it, or say you get into crypto or stocks and you really start to study how they move, and such, and different candle systems and whatnot, oh man, it gets really interesting. And then you learn how it is a true reflection of human greed and emotion and fear. Super, super cool stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I was on the medical school trajectory. I did my undergrad and my master's in medical science. In my master's, I was doing tropical parasites of the brain, like completely unrelated to psychology.
Wow.
Although it does sound related a little bit. But then I started trading by the end of COVID. I realized that I finished my master's and I was like, I had no money, I had no assets, I had no car, no place to live, and about $58,000 worth of credit card debt alone. Then about
your student loan?
$54,000 of student loan, and then $58,000 of credit card debt.
So over 100K in debt?
Over 100K in debt, yeah. With no financial resources or recourse. And I had no idea what I was going to do. Medical school wasn't for me.
These are the things I need to educate you on before they give you these student loans. They just give them to you.
Exactly, yeah. And we're like, oh, free money, right? We don't understand it. And that's one of the things that scares me about like these, paychecks that they're giving everybody. Because people get it and they're like, wow, free money. I didn't have this. I didn't have to work for it, right? And on top of that, it's preventing them from wanting to go find employment because it'll make them ineligible maybe for this $2,000 check. So kind of scary that people aren't saving or using that to be able to propagate themselves just in a consumer mentality. But anyway, I thought, okay, I need to do something to get in a financial state where I can be free, where I can do what I want to do and explore. And so I got into trading, and for sure it was tough, but I had the advantage that I liked math, and I had been teaching statistics for a very long time, about 3 or 4 years at that time. Now it's about 10 years plus. And I really like the concept of those probabilities and stuff. So, you were saying that those trading charts are maybe a little daunting. For me, I love them. I used to look at trading charts just to look at them and study them.
My math skills have always traditionally been my weak suit, but just crunching those numbers all day, just out of interest, it's not even like work for me. Like I just get on my phone, I look, or I go on the computer and do my Binance charts and such. It's definitely improved my like quick math skills to like crunch numbers and stuff.
Absolutely. No, and then big hit movies, Wolf on Wall Street. Obviously, we've all seen that. The Big Short, another really cool one. These ones were, really propelled me to like, hey, you have these skills, and with that growth mindset of maybe I can, just risk assessment, I guess, was the only thing that I had to manage, and then
Wolf of Wall Street has a great little scene from it that literally makes me almost froth at the mouth. I guess this is where I'm gonna close for our last topic and see what you know, if anything, about it. But there's a scene where he goes something to the degree of he's on the phone. He's got that greedy Leonardo DiCaprio look, and he goes, "The best way to position yourself on the settlement is to get in before the settlement happens. For when the settlement happens and you read about it in the New York Times, it's already too late." And what he's referring to is if you're dabbling in different assets that might have a lawsuit going on, you're best to position yourself before the lawsuit is done, because once the lawsuit's done, the price is going to take off. So I guess my question was, do you have any knowledge on the company Ripple or the currency that they, again, they're separate entities, but they are kind of a little bit together. That's part of the confusion and part of the lawsuit. But do you have any knowledge on Ripple Labs or XRP, the currency?
So I have some knowledge on XRP, the technology behind it, the connections to Ripple.
Because XRP was created before Ripple even existed. And if Ripple were to go away tomorrow, the currency still lives on.
That's correct, yeah. So, and then there was that lawsuit.
Still going on.
That's still going on, yeah. I think with two executives, right?
Yeah, Chris Larson and Brad Garlinghouse. They're both under probe for that, and they're essentially insinuating that they were selling illegal securities, which must be approved by the U.S. Stock and Exchange Commission. However, if you've been following this lawsuit all the way through, it's unbelievably fishy. There's so many indiscrepancies. There are people that are benefiting from crypto at the same time fighting it. There's people that work for the U.S. government and their commissions that now work in crypto. Just for an example, the lawsuit was started right before Christmas, December 2020. The head of the SEC, Jack Layton, opens the lawsuit with Ripple and resigns the next day, only to go on and work with Ethereum Foundation. I'm pretty sure Mitchell, that's right? Works for the Ethereum Foundation, has received money from Ethereum before. However, and just for definition's sake for the audience, a security is essentially a stock that pays dividends to hold it, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically they're insinuating that XRP is a security, but every G20 country out there has recognized it as a currency. And effectively, what's really interesting, again, is with the old head of the commission of the SEC going to work with Ethereum, is that the way Ethereum was marketed when it started, it was marketed more like a security than XRP was. And again, XRP was around before the company Ripple was founded. Then you have other separate stuff like I forget what she's the head of, but she's the head of a financial commission of the United States, not the Federal Reserve. That would be Jerome Powell. Something very similar, but Rosie Rios, she worked for the U.S. government in their finance sector. Now she goes to work on the board of Ripple. There's all this intermingling between government people and crypto space and whatnot, and it seems that the U.S. SEC wants to make their definitions as loose and blankety as possible, therefore that they can use it to their advantage wherever they like. They're essentially trying to argue that XRP is a security when they themselves didn't even know that, and there's emails to prove that even now they can't prove it, and they're unsure what their stance is. So again, I think that I probably just did a terrible job of explaining that whole lawsuit. If you're following the lawsuit, you totally get where I'm coming from, but as a layman, you're probably like, what is this gibberish? Do you have anything to add to that, or any other understanding of the lawsuit?
So no, I think you did a great job in explaining that. Yeah, no, that's basically the gist of what I got, was that it's a definition issue almost.
Yep.
But then very fishy that a lot of these moving parts are cycling through these different organizations, right? And
even the head of the SEC that stepped on afterwards was a professor of cryptocurrency at MIT, Gary Gensler. And now what they're doing is stifling innovation by scaring the shit out of all these pioneers of crypto and enforcing, what's the word? Mitch, help me. Enforcement by what?
Enforcement by mandation.
No, that's not it. Anyways, basically what I'm saying is they're not giving these different people running these cryptocurrencies that are going to be pivotal to innovation in the United States the notice they need. They're just essentially, they don't give a warning. They just say, hey, we think your cryptocurrency isn't following the guidelines. We're not going to give you any warning. here's a lawsuit, defend yourself. And we are not even going to give you the proper definitions of what you're being sued for, essentially. They say that they're giving proper definitions and they're very clear, but they're not. And yeah, it makes you really wonder what's at play here. Are they suppressing the price of XRP with the lawsuit? That way the higher ups in the power that be can get it out of the peasants' hands, like myself, us peasants, and get their bags. There's a lot at play. It's very interesting.
A lot of psychology to it, absolutely. I don't think it's even about the XRP anymore. I think it's, that's just a front to do some other mandates and other agenda pushing. So yeah, no, very fishy, but I think that all publicity is good publicity for cryptocurrency.
Absolutely.
So yeah, no, definitely keep your eye out for XRP.
And XRP, just a quick definition as well. I'm always showing XRP on my podcasts, but essentially it solves a massive issue out there, and that is international remittances and retail payments. And basically, when you send an international wire, it goes through the bank. They have to approve it. There's that middleman. They say, okay, you're gonna send the money to someone we approve. That's cool. Then they take their cut, can be up to 10%, and it can take up to a week. Now, why would you do that? Let's say you're an immigrant from India, and you're paying your family back home with the good opportunities you have here in Canada. You send them 100 grand, the bank takes 10K. That's kind of crappy. Why would you do that when we have something like XRP, which is a permissionless blockchain technology that you can use to send any amount of money wherever you want in the world, and it settles within about 3 seconds. And it doesn't matter if it's millions of dollars, your transaction fee is only going to be a fraction of a penny. Think about the amount of opportunity that is. And a lot of these massive companies that have to do international payments for their employees or different deals, they have pre-funded accounts with money in it ready to go to be sent out internationally because it's a slow process. If you can absolve them of having those pre-funded accounts and let their money be more loose and liquid the way it should be, creates a lot of opportunity.
Convenience, some of the best parts of a currency for sure. Yeah, XRP.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's my biggest holding. I have convictions there. Ever since I got into crypto, it's been one of my biggest optimisms in the space, I guess. And it's been funny to see how COVID and such have played into the hands of crypto holders and really enforcing that need for finite assets. And everything's just been coming to fruition. And I love it when a plan comes together, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really appreciate you coming on today.
No, me too. Thanks for having me.
That you would like to add?
No, I think that's it. We covered a broad spectrum, and I think that was great. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, you'll have to come on again. We'll talk about some other stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys, for joining ZFK Everything, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.